morning, noon, or night, everyone, and welcome to Historians Podcast, where we talk about everything history. Today's first and final segment of this esteemed podcast will be discussing a particular portion of World War II that is well known for being brutal, destructive, and an act of genocide. Our topic today will be focusing on World War II's Holocaust, and we'll be gaining an in-depth understanding of what role propaganda played in the events both leading up, during, and after the Holocaust, and briefly discuss how similar uses of propaganda are seen today. Before the Holocaust even begun, Hitler had devised multiple ways of using propaganda to sway the citizens of Nazi Germany. Or if his country couldn't put their faith in his plans, how would he ever hope to act on them? To do this, he needed to portray Germany as a victim to something bigger. By playing the role of an innocent victim to other countries or to specific demographics' atrocities, Germany's actions of war, violence, and unnecessary genocide would look like nothing more than an eye for an eye. Examples of this before acts of the Holocaust were blaming Jews for Germany's great defeat in World War I. Widespread propaganda, while not created by Hitler, was reused to reinstate that Jewish soldiers had attempted to sign a truce order and take control of Germany's army, and that due to these rogue Jews, Germany suffered a great loss. These rumors were false. The entire reason for Germany's defeat was simply because commanders of said army chose to fight when their soldiers and numbers were in no way suitable for the conditions of battle. However, this allowed the German commanders to avoid blame and keep faith in their government, while using anti-Semitic views to keep Jewish people seen as a common target or enemy. This meant, when Hitler finally began his cleansing of the world's races, religions, and standards, he would be more able to effectively sway the German population against Jewish individuals. It would force the citizens of his country to pick a side: traitors or your powerful government who has never made a mistake. Looking back, with all the information we have as privileged individuals with free internet access or paid internet access, we can clearly see Hitler and the German government's fatal flaws. But back then, the media was much more regulated and restricted within Germany, which meant that the people of Germany were only told what Hitler wanted them to hear, convincing Germany that Jewish people were not only unpure, but also untrustworthy. After these harmful pieces of propaganda were spread throughout the streets of Germany, Hitler put his plan of extermination into action, or more accurately named the final solution. This solution was the widespread eradication of Jews in death camps, taking men, women, and children to their demise. One of the least talked about subjects I have ever had the displeasure of learning about is the pure amount of propaganda these individuals were subject to. Whether you were a victim inside a camp, being sent to a camp, or safe from a camp. With an extermination camp, individuals were forced to write postcards home to family and friends, stating that they were safe, happy, and being treated incredibly well by Nazi camp leaders. It's an incredibly twisted thought that as these innocent people were being lined up and slaughtered, a pen and paper was placed in their grasps and they were told to lie. Lie to the people they had grown up with, known, loved, cherished, and then die. Another incredibly dark example would be the Theresienstadt ghetto camp. The camp had been used as an explanation to where all the Jews and Polish individuals were being taken, stating it was a necessary place for the well-being of Germany that the good citizens be separated by the bad. Over time, questions arose about the treatment of the individuals within the camp, and soon a Red Cross team was issued to do a thorough search of the area. Of course, to combat any doubts or potential disloyalties, the ghetto went through a process in which it was beautified. This meant that anything undesirable was gotten rid of and replaced by fancy, high-end, and incredibly comfortable objects. The streets were cleaned, the people ordered to act happy and lively, and then once the Red Cross team and cameras had finally concluded it was a safe and healthy place to live, the people residing in that area were taken to an external camp and slaughtered. Not only does this represent a complete and blatant disregard for human life, but it demonstrates the absolute apathy Adolf Hitler had when dealing with any undesirable threat towards his conquest of the world. It's a horrible thought, knowing that each and every one of these individuals were purged without a single reason or valid explanation. A devastating loss of innocent human life. That brings us to our last and final topic of discussion for this episode, and that is how propaganda was exposed and what that meant for German citizens, as well as briefly discussing the impact of similar propaganda in today's society. Towards the end of World War II, when Nazi Germany began to realize that their defeat may become a possibility, the entirety of German society soon began to realize what exactly they had been supporting. They were not guilty. Despite now understanding what Germany had done, they still had an unwavering faith in Hitler and his ideals. Perhaps there was a deeper reason for such horrendous measures to be taken. No. Instead, they were scared. Scared of what the Allies would do to them should they be defeated. Scared of what their future would look like. Would they send them to gas chambers? March them off despite the fact they'd done nothing wrong to their demise? Mark them off and ridicule, discriminate, assault them? It was a dark thought. They'd been so sure, so confident, due to all the propaganda, all the lies they'd been fed throughout the years. The sudden and terrifying thought of defeat seemed to make them sick. Because of this, Germans didn't just hate the idea of allowing Jews back into their lives, they feared it. When the war was coming to a close, they began to believe that the entire loss of Germany was to be blamed on Jews, and that Germany had only been defending themselves against such a horrible threat. By the time World War II had completely elapsed, Germans found no hope in the future, and couldn't picture themselves living in the same space as the people who defeated them. It's an anti-Semitic thought caused by the indoctrination of Germany, and it's something that has taken a very long time to reverse. In today's world, we see propaganda being used frequently, and though it is a fresh and incredibly sore subject topic as of right now, I would like to bring up the current war being fought between Palestine and Israel. Multiple mainstream media outlets have been used to dehumanize and decontextualize the war taking place in Palestine and Israel. Specific media outlets have been utilizing dehumanizing words in reference to Palestinian individuals. For instance, describing Israel as simply defending themselves and Palestinians as the aggressors. We hear the hostages taken captive, discussing an entirely one-sided story without even considering the sheer number of unnecessary civilian casualties that Palestinians have been subject to. Much like how Hitler used censored propaganda to describe the exterior nations as the aggressors and turn their civilians against any undesirable, Israel has done the same thing, putting themselves down as victims so that their actions do not seem as unjustified. It paints only half of a large, deep, and very historic picture, and makes it harder for people to form their own thoughts when everything is so heavily constrained. close, during the Holocaust, propaganda was an incredibly useful weapon in controlling the population of Germany to fit Hitler's beliefs, views, and ideals. It gave an entire country faith on nothing but lies, built on lies. And in the end, it was the people of Germany who were left to pay for those lies. Now we see propaganda so much more frequently in our day-to-day lives, whether it be through social media, news broadcasts at the click of a button, or SMS text. This is particularly why, in today's world, with all the information we have simply at our fingertips, we need to be more knowledgeable in how we view the media. Anything you can read could be misinformation. Anything you watch could be misinformation. Right now, I could be feeding you misinformation. That's why we as people need to really think logically, analytically, and critically about everything we come across. That's all for me.